The late afternoon sun slanted through the stained glass of the front door, casting jeweled patterns on the polished oak floor of the foyer. I stood frozen, my suitcase a pathetic anchor at my feet, as my father's words, "You're not getting a single penny," reverberated in the grand, hollow space of my grandmother's home. He waved the legal document like a conquering flag. Behind him, my mother's expression was one of glacial satisfaction. "Maybe a little homelessness will teach you some respect," she said, her voice as crisp as the Chanel suit she wore. This wasn't an eviction, it was an excommunication. My name is Rachel. At 24, with an art history degree and 3 years spent as my grandmother Margaret's live-in companion and caretaker, I was being cast out onto the street by my own parents over a fortune they believed was theirs by right. My parents, Robert and Jessica Sterling, were pillars of a certain social stratum, real estate developers whose success was measured in square footage and country club nods. My older siblings had long ago fled to coastal cities for finance and law, their visits rare and perfunctory. I was the outlier, the quiet, artsy granddaughter who chose to move in with Grandma Margaret when her osteoporosis and heart condition made living alone a silent, terrifying struggle. To my parents, my role wasn't devotion, it was a cunning form of indolence. "Finally, Rachel will have to get a real job instead of playing nurse," my mother had mused, not bothering to lower her voice as we stood by Grandma's casket a week prior. The will reading took place in the hushed leather and wood sanctuary of Mr. Harrison's law office. My parents swept in, smelling of expensive wool and anticipation. They had already been debating which of Margaret's commercial properties downtown would be the most lucrative flip. Mr. Harrison, a man whose demeanor had always reminded me of a kindly owl, adjusted his spectacles and began to read. "To my beloved granddaughter, Rachel," he intoned, his voice steady, "who sacrificed the carefree years of her young adulthood to provide me with companionship, comfort, and unwavering care, I leave my entire estate, including the primary residence at 17 Laurel Lane, all investment portfolios, commercial and residential rental properties, and liquid assets, with an approximate total value of $31.5 million. The air was sucked from the room. My mother's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. My father's face turned a mottled purple. "This is an error, a gross error." Mr. Harrison continued, untouched by the eruption. "To my son, Robert, and my daughter-in-law, Jessica, who found time for precisely 4 visits in the last 18 months of my life, I leave my profound disappointment and the sincere hope that you may one day learn what the words family and love truly mean." What followed was a masterclass in familial warfare. I was immediately scrubbed from the family text chain. That evening's dinner, a weekly ritual I'd attended since childhood, was held without me. "You're not family anymore," my mother said coolly when I called, confused. The private slander became public at Grandma's memorial service. My father, positioning himself near the punch bowl, held court. "He systematically isolated my mother," he declared to a cluster of aunts and uncles, "filled her head with nonsense. We're contesting the will, of course. It's a matter of principle." The looks of pity and suspicion aimed at me were a physical weight. The aggression escalated. They ambushed me outside my bank, where I was trying to understand the labyrinth of accounts Grandma had left in my name. My mother thrust a sheaf of papers at me. "Power of attorney," she demanded. "You're a child with a paintbrush, Rachel. You'll blow through this in a year. We'll manage it for you." When I refused, my father leaned in, his breath hot with anger. "We're declaring you unfit and contesting the will on grounds of undue influence. Margaret wasn't in her right mind. You took advantage of a sick old woman." The coup de grace was the lockout. Returning from the grocery store the next morning, I found the elegant front door deadbolted, a heavy chain glinting through the sightlight. My father answered my frantic call. "The house is ours until probate is settled. You're a squatter. Don't come back." I spent that night and the next 5 in a motel that smelled of mildew and despair, my savings evaporating. In the grim fluorescent light, their accusations began to feel like truth. Had I overstepped? Was this reward grotesque? What my parents, in their towering arrogance, never considered was that Margaret Hayes was not a frail woman to be manipulated. She was a strategist. Our quiet evenings weren't just about tea and old movies, they were tutorials. She had walked me through her investment portfolios, explaining blue chip stocks versus municipal bonds. She showed me the deeds to her properties, the terms of the leases. She'd say, they think money is just a number in an account. It's not, it's freedom, and it requires respect. More importantly, she had built a fortress of evidence. One afternoon, she'd taken my phone. "Record this, darling." On the screen, her face was serene, her mind razor sharp. I, Margaret Hayes, am of complete sound mind. My decision to leave my estate to my granddaughter, Rachel Sterling, is my own, made out of love and gratitude for her selfless care. She made several such recordings. She also voluntarily underwent cognitive assessments with her neurologist, Dr. Evans, who documented her exceptional mental acuity in detailed reports. And, in a locked drawer of her writing desk, I found the damning archive. Decades of letters from my parents, most requesting loans for can't-miss business ventures, alongside her own journal entries chronicling their emotional absence. The final entry read, "Robert and Jessica see an estate. Rachel saw a person. The difference is everything." Armed with this arsenal, I met with Mr. Harrison. He smiled for the first time in weeks. "Margaret was always 5 steps ahead," he said. "This," he said, tapping the file containing the recordings and reports, "is what we call a silver bullet." My parents, meanwhile, grew emboldened by their own fiction. They retained a high-priced litigator, a man named Waters with a shark smile, and demanded a settlement conference. The atmosphere in Mr. Harrison's conference room was arctic. Waters opened with bluster, allegations of coercion, of a vulnerable elderly woman bullied into disinheriting her only son. When he finished, I spoke. My grandmother anticipated this. I placed my phone on the conference table and tapped play. Grandma's voice, warm and firm, filled the room. "I, Margaret Hayes, am of complete sound mind. My decision to leave my estate to my granddaughter, Rachel Sterling, is my own, made out of love and gratitude for her selfless care." I played 2 more clips. Then I slid copies of the cognitive reports and a selection of the letters across the polished table. Waters scanned the documents, his confident smirk dissolving. He leaned over and whispered urgently to my father, who began to protest before going silent, his defiance crumbling into stunned defeat. Waters straightened up. "My clients withdraw their contest." My father's last stand was a raw, stripped-bare plea. "Rachel, we're your parents. Have a heart. Give us what's fair." I looked at the man who had chained me out of my home. "Fair?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Fair was you visiting your mother. Fair was you seeing me more than a nuisance. Grandma gave me what I earned, with every grocery run, every remembered pill, every hour I spent just listening to her. You had decades to earn her love. You didn't bother. You don't get to buy it now with guilt." I moved back into 17 Laurel Lane the next day. The silence there was no longer hollow, but peaceful. I used a portion of the inheritance to establish the Margaret Hayes Fellowship for Geriatric Care Innovation. The rest I stewarded as she taught me, not as a windfall, but as a responsibility. My parents eventually sent a conciliatory email hoping to put this behind us. I replied with polite, unyielding clarity. Our relationship henceforth would be on terms of mutual respect, not financial entitlement. They had shown me their core when they believed me powerless. In trying to make me homeless, they had only succeeded in showing me the door to my own indelible, hard-won security. The true inheritance was never the money. It was the proof, in Grandma's own meticulous hand, that love shown in quiet, daily acts is the only currency that ever really matters.